Hey, I made a self-watering orchid system that actively soaks the orchids once every 7 days. Let me show you how I did it. Firstly, 3D print the main vase and other 3D printable parts, all of which I've published on Printables and MakerWorld. Getting the settings right is pretty important, so I've already provided guides and ready print profiles. PETG and PET are advised, with PLA being best to avoid. When printed, some minor stringing is likely, so using a heat gun, burn it off. Don't hover in the same spot for too long, as that will melt the print. PETG is usually kinda watertight, but there are several sections I coat with UV resistant epoxy. This particular J-Diction combo is my favourite. UV resistant epoxy will seal any gaps and won't go yellow when exposed to light. Mix it well, and using a wide paintbrush, spread the epoxy on the bottom of the vase, getting it around the edges. The seam of the print, so where the layer changes happen, is known to sometimes leak, so go up and down on it. Try getting some around where all the pipes connect to, and don't forget the seam in the top section of the vase. The pipe section is the most crucial to get right, as it will experience the most water pressure. So I use a spongy brush like this, going through all the pipes. Additionally, using a smaller paintbrush, cover the pipes on the outside. The draining pipes don't need to be covered all the way, just where they connect with the water reservoir. Know that some epoxy may leak onto the inside brim that holds the lid, so clean it off with some paper towels. It's a good idea to flip the vase up and down every 15 minutes for the first hour, to prevent any additional runs and make the epoxy spread evenly. While the epoxy is still fresh, it's a good time to attach the water sensor to the water sensor holder, so its positioning could be adjusted. 24 hours or so later, once the epoxy is cured, it's time to attach the magnets. I use Gorilla Glue or fast drying epoxy for this. I 3D printed a tool to get the magnet in the exact place every single time, but it is roughly 45mm off the top, and same procedure for the electronics box, but it's 25mm off the top. The electronics box also needs a hole for the button, which I can't print due to it being done in vase mode, so I drill it after the fact. The hole is around 30mm from the top and 5mm in diameter. I have a special tool set up for it, but any drill will suffice. I'll probably make a version that doesn't need to be printed in vase mode, but it will be weaker, hence the original vase mode. Next up, cut the silicone tube to length that connects the pump to the top section. It's around 115 to 120mm. Cut the tip going into the top section at a slight angle to direct the water. Gather all the parts, it's time for assembly. The silicone tube is pushed onto the pump and then goes into the angled pipe facing inwards. It's hard to show, but it looks something like this. The electronics go into the enclosure, and the 12-volt connector has to be bent at a slight angle and clipped through the top strain relief channel, just like this. Then hook up the 9-volt battery, making sure the connector is facing the front, and then slide the battery in with the actual cables off to the side so they're pushed down. Then connect up the electronics to the pump, attach the water sensor, and cover it with the electronics lid. It may beep from accidental button pressing, so don't worry. The separation lid would go on the inside, but before the lid, fill up the bottom section with water all the way to the top. Any excess will spill out if you go overboard. Before placing the orchid inside, I would recommend attaching a very thin nylon wrap. I'm using wig caps or pool skimmers depending on the size of the pot. This is to prevent any part of the orchid medium escaping and blocking the pump, though I've hardly ever had that happen, so it is an optional precaution. Place the separation lid on the inside and drop in the orchid. For the first manual cycle, hold the button down for 5 seconds, and it will activate the watering cycle. It will keep pumping the water up until it reaches the water sensor, will then momentarily stop to prevent overflow and preserve battery, and then it goes again. In turn, soaking the orchid medium for around 2 minutes. And in case of any water sensor failures, the 2 draining channels are there to save the day. The watering cycle will then happen again automatically in 7 days time, or it can also be set to happen from once a day to 14 days. More information is available on my website. Using these watering systems, I can place the orchids anywhere around the house and not worry about them, knowing they will always be watered. just changing the water out once every 3 to 5 months and the battery every 2 years. This has in fact been the only way I've managed to get my orchids to rebloom, and now you can make your own too. Let me know your thoughts or suggestions on this project below the video. Thank you.